Good morning and welcome to WNHH-FM's Dateline New Haven. I'm your host, Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make the Elm City tick. Charles Nagaro, Sr. and Jr., have made our community tick and rub our bellies in satisfaction for a long time. They built up Chabaso Bakery and Atticus Bookstore Cafe as two institutions that do good and do well in New Haven. Now, and this is sort of breaking news, folks, within the week, Charles Sr. has handed over the reins to Charles Jr. The new era is about to begin. Father and son are here in the WNHHF studio to tell us all about that. Thanks for coming in, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
It's great to see you both.
Be here.
One of the great stories of generational change. And thanks to New Haven Hospital for providing support for today's program. I feel like we're in the midst of a lot of that in New Haven, passing the torch, generational change, whether it's, houses of worship or government or business. And that's always a tricky current to navigate, wouldn't you say?
No, it's not tricky at all.
Well, anyway, it's big news. Charlie Sr., it's a week ago you turned over the reins, right?
It's been a process over the last few weeks, but I've sort of moved out in the last week.
So what did that mean to move out? And if you don't mind getting a little closer to the mic, you can move it closer to you.
What does it mean to move out? It means I don't have a desk. I don't have a place to go to in the morning. I have to find out something else to do with my life.
What have you been doing last week?
Well, I'm trying to figure out how to take piano lessons, but I haven't quite.
Well, it's so interesting. In our later years, a lot of us decide we're going to do something we always want to do. And sometimes people find that we can't learn it the way we did when we were kids. I had one friend, like his father tried to learn Talmud and just couldn't do it at that age. Or I can't learn languages I used to, but other people can. Other people become great painters or writers.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to become a great pianist, but I'm going to see if I can learn to play the scales.
So we'll start with chopsticks.
Chopsticks, yeah.
And Charlie Jr., what's it like to be fully in charge? Now, I know it's been years in the making, right? You've taken a lot of responsibility at the businesses.
Yeah, so I started at the bakery in 2006. And I was there until about 2016, and then had the opportunity to go run the bookstore cafe. Was there for 3 years. Had a great time. And then when it came up that this was an opportunity to go back to Chabaso and help run that business and to see what we could do to get both businesses to come together. They're already symbiotic, but like really just run.
And you are running both now, correct?
Yeah,
you're the CEO of both.
Yeah,
but it's not one company.
It's not one company. It's two totally different businesses.
Oh, I always thought it was one business.
No, it's two.
And Charlie, so you're out of both, right?
I'm out of both.
But these are both important institutions in our city. Yeah. And I'd like to just do a little history. Did the bookstore cafe come first?
Yeah.
Actually, a bookstore came first.
Right, and that was in around the late because I remember coming here in '78. The bookstore was already in business, and there was no cafe there. When did you start the bookstore, Charlie Sr.?
Bookstore started in 1976.
75.
75?
Yeah.
75.
Now, how come the guy who didn't start it remembers that?
We did some research. We found, I think it was an article from
The Advocate,
maybe in like 75, and the bookstore opened before the British Art Center did.
Wow.
Before the museum did.
Yeah.
And then was it around 82 that it added a cafe?
80. I think it was 81. What do you think it was?
I think 81's good year.
That's great.
That's what I do remember, because I remember having tea with a politician I'd just written a negative article about. And we said, where do you go for tea? And the only option was Atticus Bookstore Cafe. And this was a new idea.
Yeah.
And at the time, New Haven had a pretty rundown downtown that was trying to come back.
Mm-hmm.
And we all know now it's like the thriving downtown of Connecticut where people like to come.
Yeah.
And they say that often that's one of the first signs, this kind of coffee shop culture. We have real coffee shop culture in New Haven, which we did not have. You folks were the pioneers. Now, I'm trying to think how old you were at that time, Charlie.
I was born in 83. So,
wow. So you were born after the cafe.
I was born after the cafe.
So, Charlie Sr., what made you decide, when this hadn't yet been known as the thing to do in New Haven, to make it a bookstore cafe?
I've never been asked the question a lot of times, Paul, and I'm never quite sure what the answer is. A lot of it was happenstance. I had friends in Washington that had opened perhaps the original East Coast Bookstore Cafe in DuPont Center, and I think that sort of inspired me.
Well, how did you get in the book business in the first place?
Oh, grew up in a grocery store.
Where?
Waterbury, Connecticut. Grew up in my father's grocery store and worked there. And
what was it called?
The Handy Dandy Market.
And it was just like a regular grocery back in the days when not everything was a super Stop and Shop.
Well, it started out as a road sign fruit and vegetable stand and grew into just a small little grocery store.
Wow.
And I worked there all through high school and went off to college and law school. And after a 5-year sort of desultory practice of law, I realized I really wanted to be in the retail business. I bought a bookstore.
Wow.
And I loved it.
And you like to read?
I like to read. I don't love to read. I really like retail.
Okay.
I love retail and I love the interaction with customers.
He reads a lot more than he gives himself credit for.
Well, he's not saying he doesn't read. He said he doesn't love it the same way.
Yeah. But he crushes books.
Oh,
It's
yeah?
just like, yeah. I gave you a 1,000.
He was reading Jill Lepore. That's a pretty long book. Did you read the whole
It was
thing?
a long book. I did read the whole thing.
What was it, like 800 pages or something?
It was 800 or 900 pages. Just before that, I read Moses' biography.
Oh, Robert
Carol's
Moses,
biography,
the
Moses,
power
yeah.
broker. Yeah. I have to
that-
admit, I didn't finish that one, but I loved it. Yeah.
Oh, that was really interesting. What's interesting about that is there's a book now called
By the new woman from the Harvard, Elizabeth Cohen, about Ed Logue.
No, I'm thinking of Motherless Brooklyn.
Oh, I've read that.
Motherless Brooklyn.
Motherless Brooklyn is a...
Jonathan Lethem.
Yeah.
But
That's not new.
Well, it's not new. The movie's brand new. The movie's
brand new.
And the movie does a sort of a segue into a sort of a Robert Moses takeoff.
Oh.
There's an undercurring theme of criminality and corruption and all. And it's
Now, that one I never heard about Moses. I heard Moses not being liked for the way he remade New York with a heavy hand and against sort of grassroots involvement and old versus new urbanism. I never heard they say there's corruption with Moses.
Well, he wasn't corrupt, but he allowed a lot of corruption. Yeah, I think in the slum clearance, this is what Curro says in biography, is that in the slum clearance program, he basically gave it to cohorts, people he was in connection with, and they were kind of dirty. I mean, they would just create
Well, if you think
slums.
about who hauls asphalt,
I don't know that.
like in other words, know which companies actually spend their days doing the physical work of chopping up stuff, building, carting away. Bob McCormick says, "I'm watching you instead of Trump impeachment hearing." I think that's high praise.
Yeah.
So we got like you could be Adam Schiff and okay,
Yeah, perfect.
and then Edgar Mastriano. Hello, love your breads. I love your breads too. Thanks for listening, guys. So you went into business, but you decided to make this leap to. Was business going well? Did you need a new angle? Because I remember when I first got there, we used to line up in the basement to get our course books, and then you stop getting course books. You go there for tea.
No, well, that was a long time ago. We didn't do course books for very long.
I did buy my first course books at Atticus.
Really?
In 1978. Yeah.
Well, that's lost on me, frankly.
That's okay. It's okay. Your son's got all your dates covered, Charlie. It's okay.
Completely lost on me.
He never went into the basement.
But that was interesting that you were the pioneer. Now you got so many places. You got, I can't even name them all, Coffee and Blue State, and down the street the
Book Trader, Starbucks. Yeah. So
there was a little espresso bar up the street from us on
Willoughby's.
Street. No, it wasn't Willoughby's. We predated Willoughby's.
Oh, do you mean down by St. Raphael's?
Going towards St. Raphael's.
That place smelled great. Yeah, I love that place. Yeah.
Remember they had a big old gold sort of
embroidery. We used to go there. Yeah.
I remember when we first got started, I went up there to see the owner, desperately asking. It wasn't the owner, maybe somebody who worked there. Could you come and show me how to use my espresso machine? I have no idea.
Was it an instant hit?
Oh yeah, it was an incredibly instant hit.
Did it start overtaking your revenues? Were you selling more tea and coffee than books?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And you weren't a restaurant right away, right? You were more a coffee shop, right?
We were more a coffee shop. We did some weird coffee things. We had these little KitchenAid coffee grinders. We had 6 of them, and you could ask what kind of coffee you wanted, and we'd grind the beans and
no kidding.
Put it in a milli or pot for you.
And I don't know if your son's going to know this, but people didn't used to know about coffee.
Yeah.
Dunkin' Donuts was considered the highest grade coffee.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
And then this became something new in New Haven when you had this, and then you had Willoughby's and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I always felt that Atticus was a place that evolved with the times. That's sort of how you stayed in business, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you watched that as a kid with your dad, right? And then you were part of it with what you did with the restaurant, and even the kind of books you sold. Didn't that kind of change too over time, Charlie?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, I'm not sure if the books changed over time so much. The cafe changed much more radically over time. It really did start out as a coffee bar. It's come all the way full scale to now, sort of like a bakery cafe.
Yeah. Colleen's really taken the bookstore in, I'd say, more directions than just books, and it's really added to the whole.
Gifts is a big thing, right?
Yeah. Gifts, cards.
Oh, and now you're also doing vinyl, which is so great coming full circle. You know, you guys at the vinyl place.
I miss Cutler's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you grow up going to Cutler's?
I grew up going to Cutler's, yeah. And getting my I didn't get my first CD there. Abby gave me my first CD. My older sister gave me my first CD. But like going to Cutler's, getting a CD, flipping through racks. That was
Okay,
that was fun.
tell me about a day early on, Charlie Senior, when you said this is going to work. You were trying to make a business work in downtown New Haven back when it was harder.
Have you had that day yet?
I'll tell you sort of like a contrary to that. You know, we were building the cafe, and I was like the contractor, and all the stuff was going on inside the store, and everybody had said this was a great idea, what a great thing it was, and it was going to be wonderful. And then one day, a couple of sort of arrogant kind of Yaley types walked by and said, "Books and food, what a stupid idea." It just crushed me. I thought it's all going to fail. It's all over.
So when did you realize it wasn't going to fail?
You know, as soon as we opened, it was just incredible. When we opened, it was a mob scene.
Wow.
It was just, you know, and it was hard to identify what it was. And somebody said, it was interesting, somebody said it was because you had a bar that wasn't a bar. It was a place for coffee, where single women could go and sit and feel comfortable. And there were all sorts of accidental sort of things like that we tapped into. That there was no plan, no stroke of genius. They just sort of happened. But the cafe was an instant success, and it's gone through evolution since then. I mean, it's now under what Charlie's done in the last couple of years, sort of lapsing everything else that ever did in terms of volume, in terms of excitement and satisfaction
and staff.
And what have you done to make it different, Charlie Jr.?
Well, I mean, we went in there. We had an opportunity 3.5 years ago to really remake the culture, and it needed to be remade. You know, we were making some pretty major mistakes, and you know, for the business to go forward, we had to evolve. And we had some ideas in our head about like who we could be, who we could emulate, where we could take the food and the people and the team, and how to make that happen, and really just chunked it up and started.
But give me specifics.
Yeah.
Like, is it still black bean soup or the fresh bread?
Yeah. No, I would be killed if I got rid of black bean soup.
You would be.
Yeah.
You would have to get protection at the very least.
Yeah. And I think that was the really important thing, Paul. It was like, don't try to make it something it's not. Just try to see if you can make it a better and better and better version.
But what's something specific you did that was different?
So we built an entire bakery inside Chabaso just for Atticus.
Oh, back down in James Street.
Yeah. So, you know, we're getting.
What was the reason for doing that? Different type of bread would sell there?
Yeah. So Chabaso wasn't really able to. Chabaso was focused on making wholesale frozen cases of ciabattas, and we wanted something else, so we had to do it ourselves. So we hired a baker. We bought a small oven. We bought a mill. We started milling grains. And that's really led into like what this next generation of bread is for us at Atticus, and then probably for Chabaso too.
And what is the new? What kind of bread?
So Atticus does breads that are all naturally leavened. So everything that we are making is just like flour, water, salt, and grains. And whereas we're not using any commercial yeast, so it's sourdough. And so we have.
But what's different from before for the customer?
So it's much fresher. We bake it in the morning. So our bakers come in at 7 o'clock in the morning. They bake for 2 hours, and it gets delivered at 11 a.m. So bread gets to the cafe and it's already warm. We're trying to emulate this experience of like, if we could put a bakery in the cafe, which we would love to do, but we can't. It's too small.
So that's one big change.
Yeah.
Have you done other things with the menu or the way the staff works or the hours?
Yes, we hired a few really key people. Also, we still have this really wonderful staff that's been there for 20 or 30 years. Oscar, who was there when it first opened. A lot of the servers have been there for like 10 or 15 years. But then adding on like really professional management. You know, Brandy's from Barcelona Group in New Haven, Josh the baker, and that helps us just kind of tweak things where we still have black bean soup, we still have avocado salads, but
something new?
Exactly. They themselves are better. We started to add a whole bunch of small plates using stuff from farms. So Matt Wick, our culinary director, is doing a whole bunch of great stuff with the squash right now. And not just like any squash, but these like fun varietals of squash that Dan Barber's growing with his seed company. Like
so what would be a kind of squash?
Like kogi nut squash.
How do you spell that?
Koginut. So it's a version of the butternut squash, but it's much smaller. And like butternut squash is kind of like not awesome. It looks awesome, but most people are, you have to like bake it with brown sugar to make it taste good. Like Kogi nut is like you cut it up, you slice it.
I wonder
you
if it's because it's smaller, has more flavor compact.
It's bred for flavor rather than for size and yield.
That's so interesting. And the last thing about Atticus before we get into Chabaso, so it always had this social, like a lot of sexual business in New Haven, it always had this social aspect to it as part of the community and gave back. Yeah. So, you know, we know about the tradition of leaving the unsold bread out at night for homeless people. Do you still do that?
We don't have any unsold bread anymore.
Oh, okay.
So no, we don't do that anymore, unfortunately. But
it's good you're selling the bread.
Yeah.
And also, you used to give people a free loaf if they voted, if they came with the I voted sticker.
We still do that. Yeah, we give it to everybody on election day.
So that's a change.
Yeah, because you're not allowed to actually give people something for voting. You're not allowed to reward somebody monetarily.
Oh, so did someone punk you in the past? Did they call?
No, we just Googled it. We were like, oh wait, we can't do this. So hopefully there's no statute of limitations.
But you can still give them like a fifth of liquor before they vote if they vote for your candidate, right?
Absolutely, yes.
Yes, good. Yeah. Some traditions we don't want to have die.
You can take them to the casino. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of thing. Okay, so anyway, what we're talking about, but we're talking about Atticus Bookstore. We're talking about Chabaso's Bakery. One of the great symbiotic business enterprises in New Haven, which just had a generational change. It's been in the work for years. Charles Nagaro Sr. founded it. His son, Charles Nagaro Jr., has been gradually taking the reins, and now it's complete. Now it's news. Now it's official, and we're talking about that on WNHH-FM, Dateline, New Haven, 103.5 FM, live streamed at newhavenindependent.org. So now tell me about Chabaso. That's the bakery on James Street, another great institution. When did that start?
Chabaso started in 1995.
Is that right, Charlie Jr.?
I think so, yeah. I think that's right. Yeah. We had been saying 96 for a while, but yeah, it was 95.
I think it was 95.
Why did you start that?
Why did I start it? At the time, we had a couple of cafes and 2 or 3 bookstores.
Oh, where were those?
There was a bookstore in Middletown. It was in University Bookstore.
Middletown always is the second outpost, like my moons from New Haven. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Middletown's come alive a lot, I think.
It has.
Yeah.
And where else did you have one?
I had one in New Haven. I had one in
Amherst.
And you still have those other 2?
Nope, they're all gone except New Haven.
So because you had 3, you thought it was time to bake one central place?
Well, it wasn't just a question of baking one central place. It was trying to have an enterprise that would be expandable, that could be rationalized. I didn't see any future in expanding the bookstores. That was the heyday of Barnes & Noble in those days.
And you've kind of outlasted them in a lot of ways.
Well, so far. But we couldn't go anywhere with the bookstores.
So your father doesn't take a lot of credit for what he does, and he seems kind of pessimistic. Is that his secret?
Yeah.
But you seem to me, Charles Jr., is a more optimistic person.
Yeah, I try to be. I mean, it's more fun being optimistic.
I catch a lot of grief from him about my negativism. That's
but given the success in your life, I wonder if at some point now at 78 you get to say, oh, that did work right. I did well. You know, it wasn't totally an accident. You've said everything's an accident so far, Joey Jr. I'm just going to point that out.
Any day now, I'm going to.
But anyway, you said you wanted to grow the business, and the growth was not going to be in bookstores. It was going to be in the baking.
I needed a business to expand, and we were making some great baked goods at that time.
Did you make them? Where'd you make them?
We had this little place up on Crown Street.
Oh, Crown Street. Yeah,
we had this little place up on Crown Street. This little converted house that Arthur Fisher had converted into a kind of a culinary institute. And we lasted there for about 10 or 12 years. We made a great baguette, we made great pastries. Really.
So that's where the growth was going to be.
I thought that we would start a wholesale business. I thought that's where the growth could come.
And then, how big did it get?
How big did it get? Well, today Chabaso bread can be found everywhere in New England. Every major.
Like how much? What's a metric that talks about how much business you do? How many loaves a day or dollars a year?
Charlie's got that, I think.
I mean, we go through about 25,000 pounds of white flour every day. 25,000 pounds of white flour a day. So that's, I mean, it's about 25, like just say 30,000 loaves of bread a day.
That's how much you sell?
Yeah.
How do you make that much? How many people work for you?
There's about 100 and something people that work at Chabaso.
135, I think.
Wow. So that's you're a real employer there. You're like a neighborhood anchor. Yeah. And tell me if I'm wrong. I've noticed over the years you've hired a lot of people in the neighborhood, a lot of immigrants in Fairhaven. They kind of came to stabilize the neighborhood, and you helped them do that by giving them the job.
Yep.
One of our great successful businesses.
Yep. And we've always been doing as much as we can with benefits, so giving people medical, dental, 401k.
And is it amazing now that makes you a hero, what everyone used to do? I mean, now it's like it's so hard to get a job with benefits and a pension. Yeah.
Well, the nice thing is we are seeing more and more big places doing it. So like Amazon is doing it with, you know, a lot of peer pressure, but you know, it is still pretty rare, especially in the food business. Like, so at Atticus, we have medical, dental, 401k for full-time employees, and like find another restaurant in New Haven that does that.
And then I also noticed that you've done projects with other community organizations. In Fairhaven, you've done that kind of healthy eating program, right? For fighting diabetes.
Well, yeah, New Haven Farms started in our backyard, mostly by accident, when my mom planted like 20 by 40 foot of
backyard
tomatoes.
of your home or the bakery?
No, the backyard of the bakery.
That's not a yard there. I
There
guess there is a yard.
There's a small little, well, it's a relatively small yard, and when you plant that many tomatoes, you realize really quickly you need a farmer.
Yeah.
So that turned into, through the help of Fairhaven Community Health Clinic, that turned into New Haven Farms, and then that went off to like be its own thing, which is wonderful.
And then they also have this program where like people work off diabetes by working on the farm, growing the stuff, and their patients at the health clinic, and they learn how to cook the vegetables.
Yeah,
that's kind of fun.
Yeah, it's a really brilliant way of like funding a community farm.
So Charlie, where did you grow up? Where's your family?
I grew up in New Haven.
You guys live in New Haven?
Yep.
What part of town?
East Rock.
Okay. And did you grow up thinking I'm going to go into business like my dad? Your dad worked?
No, I grew up trying to avoid it as much as possible.
Because he worked at his father's grocery. Did you work at Atticus?
I did a little bit. So he worked at his father's grocery and then tried to avoid it as much as possible. And I very little worked at Atticus, and I never thought of it as like a career.
What did you want to do?
I had no idea, Paul. But I wanted to be creative. I wanted to make things. I like solving problems. So I like to see opportunities in things that are as frustrating for other people. So to see something and then to be able to kind of imagine how things that aren't working could come together to work better than they've
So I
ever
have a
worked.
feeling where that's going to go with the business, because you've already mentioned parts where, you know, your dad ran a long time. And you say it's time to take the bait. Well, first it was, I guess, the cafe to a new place, and you're obviously tapped into the whole foodie movement and locally grown sustainable agriculture, and I see you're tapping into that the way your father tapped into other things that were happening in the community a generation ago. But what did you go into first? Did you go off to college? Did you become a lawyer like your dad?
No, I went to college for about a semester in Florida. That was basically a glorified country club, and came home for Christmas break and had this thought in my head. Was like, okay, if I keep doing this, if I just go to college for 4 years, I'm going to end up working for my dad when I graduate. And I was like, I gotta get out of here. I gotta get out of here. So I moved to Chicago. I was 19. I moved to Chicago. I was like fixing cars and painting cars, and I really liked that because that was fun. I was like putting big engines into small cars, and again, it's like problem solving, playing big kid Legos. Wasn't making any money. Came back to New Haven, was doing the same thing, not making any money, and realized that like I had this cool hobby and it was fun, but I wasn't a career. So, and at that time the bakery was growing quite a bit, and I had like worked there a summer or two and was talking to some of the employees, and it sounded like there was opportunities to put pieces together and make it work better.
How old were you then?
I was 22.
So you've been in the business since 22?
Yeah. So yeah, the irony is the month I would have graduated from college, I went to go work at the bakery.
And you kind of worked your way up. And now, Charlie Sr., were you thinking, okay, this is good. My son will be able to keep the business going? Did you have that feeling? He'll learn all the parts from the ground up?
I was always ambiguous about that, Paul. I don't know.
Tell me about that.
You know,
I was a punk.
No, I don't think he was a punk.
I walked in on like week 2 and was like, I can do this better than you.
Well, and in some ways, I don't know that he was good at that time, but he certainly has come to be better. I'll just give you a couple observations.
It's come to be what?
He's come to be able to do it better than I can. I'll just say a couple observations. One is in the cafe. You know, we always sold good soup. We always had soup, but I always thought of soup as being made by like a plumber or somebody who could make the soup for us. I mean, Charlie's hired a chef. This guy, Matt.
Don't undervalue plumbers.
Just as soup makers, you know, and the bread thing. I mean, we were a breakthrough in bread 20 years ago or 25 years ago, and that's still a good product, but it's a supermarket product, and the product that he's now making, he's not making himself, but that he's really generated, is the next revolution. I mean, it's just a whole new. It's a whole new thing.
Was it called artisanal before your son got involved?
Oh yeah, it was called. Yeah, we were called artisanal way back in our day. His is, I don't know his is artisanal too, or artisanal.
So the son
2.0.
saw that, because I mean, the foodie generation is different. Charlie, you were first wave. There weren't even coffee shops. There wasn't this idea you had coffee other than Dunkin' Donuts. So you had the espresso machine. You had some bread that tasted really good. And now, I guess, is it fair to say your son now came of age in a generation where the ante was up?
The ante is
You
up
have all this
tremendously.
kind of like, you're supposed to worry about where the food came from. You're supposed to have all these 20 different ways of looking at squash, 20 different ways of looking at bread, 20 different ways of looking at soup,
Mhm.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And all much too much, far beyond me. And the big override of it all is people are much more concerned about what they eat, what it's doing to their body, and what it's doing to their health.
Right.
And that's, so we basically made Chabaso on white bread. And it's really good white bread. It's the best white bread you can get. Now comes along Charlie and his crew and the concept that, well, that's not good enough. You got to have something that's more
Well, you said it's still
sustainable.
22,000 pounds of white flour.
That's Chabaso.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, it's
Chabaso.
Chabaso.
It's not what he's doing.
What are you
Well,
doing?
So we're doing is, I mean, Atticus does like 100 kilograms or like 200 pounds of dough a day. So it's a tiny little fraction. But so the goal for Atticus as a business is to get commodity white flour out by the end of next year. We're pretty close. So like all the pastries that we're coming out with now, like our scones, are all whole grain. And we use grains that people don't really realize that they're whole grain.
Mm-hmm.
It tastes better. So ultimately someone's going to eat something.
I got to develop that taste because I still, even though I'm like a vegan and I care about
Yeah.
my health, I
Yeah.
really like white flour taste, even though
Sure.
it's not as good for me. Same
Sure,
with pasta.
absolutely. Everybody likes it. Like, and I have a guilty pleasure for that like really cheap Italian bread that you just use to like soak up really
Yeah,
cheap
yeah.
tomato sauce.
Yeah.
And that's okay. But there's just another experience out there in varietal grains. So it's grains that again are just like the squash. They're bred for taste and nutrition rather than yield.
Mm-hmm. And we're talking to the father-son team that's passed the torch. Charlie Nagaro, senior and junior of Atticus and Chabaso, and Dateline New Haven, 103.5 FM, live stream, newhavenindependent.org at WNHH-FM. So you've been working together until this week, gradually passing the torch for 14 years. Tell me, was it ever tough? What did you have to learn how to do?
Of course it was.
Get rid of me.
I mean, I think at some point it's like this is not a constant. Like you do it and then you lose it, but like you start to learn to just accept the other person for who they are, instead of trying to change them.
And all kids, well, not all kids, so many kids look at what their parents do, and say, I could do this better. I mean, my daughter, when she was 11, was convinced she could drive better than I could, which might have been true. But I mean, like,
Right.
they're sure.
Right.
And so when you just mentioned that about learning to accept, can you think of a day when that hit you? When you were being a punk?
He was 7.
And you
Yeah.
were saying, but on the job, when you're working together, did you say, okay, I have to back off about the 7th espresso machine?
I mean, I think that was just like a week. There's weekly reminders, Paul.
Give me one.
I think some of it will.
Well, I'll give you.
Give me one,
Yeah,
Shirley.
you have one? I don't think I have one. That's
Well, no, I'll
really
give you-
appropriate.
I'll give you a macro. I think the thing he does much better than I do, which comes out weekly, is interactions with people.
Now, at first, did he try to tell you, hey, Dad, talk to that person with the tattoo and the nose ring? They really do have as much money to spend, or was there something else? And Charlie Sr., can you come closer to the mic?
Yeah, he's. It's not just at first. It's maybe sort of an ongoing thing. I mean, I really do have a problem with the kind of a negativism. I mean, I always.
I was just teasing you. I never noticed that about you at all.
No, I think it's true. I see it.
I always thought you were great to deal with.
I think that there's always looking at the dark side or the negative side of things, and what Charlie brings to the table is, well, first of all, recognition of that in me, and not doing themselves. So, I mean, I've had some good people work for me over the years. I mean, they've been very, very important to everything we've done. But I've not been able to. I've never really sustained a lot of great people over time. I think that's where Charlie does much better. I mean, he also locates and recruits really good people. But I think he can sustain them much better than I can. I think he's a lot more.
Can you think of one person who was about to leave and Charlie Jr. came up and said, hey, My dad just kind of looks at things negative. He's a good guy, and we'll just make sure that you don't have to.
I think honestly, I think if someone's like really, just in a really general sense, if somebody's already ready to leave, like you gotta let them go.
Gotta help them go.
You gotta help them go
because they want to leave.
Right. Yeah.
But what if they don't?
Well,
Give
what
me
if
an
they
example.
don't?
Not a name. Can you give me an example of where your son recognized how to keep someone you might not have been able to keep? You don't have to give the name or
I
the year.
I think he's in the midst of them right now with his some of the members on his team. There are people on his team that I thought were like, I didn't know how to work that well with him, but he does.
But what's something you did? I'm looking for specific. Again, not a person, but like not yelling or finding out there's something personal going on in their life or something that would make the job fun or the new challenge.
I think it's not so much about like yelling or like temperament. It's the difference between us is, like I like to collaborate with people. And I think my dad comes from this world where he has these ideas and he's like, here's the idea, go do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that worked sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that I've learned over the years is that when it doesn't work, there's like this whole other wonderful, it's great when it doesn't work too. And I enjoy collaborating with people as much, if not more, than just being like, here's this thing, I'm going to go do it. It's like,
so it would be an example. Like you talked about the person with the squash.
Yeah.
What's his name?
Matt Wick.
W-R-C-K?
W-I-C-K.
So he's a guy who grows specialty squashes?
No, he has the relationships with the farmers. He's our culinary director. Yeah. But so like, I think I didn't really ever get to experience collaboration in my life until 3 or 4 years ago with this Atticus project. I met the startup team behind Junzi, that QSR on Broadway.
Junzi, yeah, those Yaleys.
Yeah. So I met Reed, who actually was the only non-Yaley on the team, and Reed works for us now. He's our communications director / everything.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So he was behind doing the Grand Gab this year. But I got to
get to that.
Yeah, I got to hang out with Reed and Lucas and Andrew, and Lucas is the chef, and Andrew was the operations person. And just seeing those 3 guys like have fun together at work and have to be successful, it broke down all because the only experiences I had or professional were at the bakery or at these like auto body shops. Mm-hmm. And that was a lot of top down, like this is how you do things.
Mm-hmm.
And to see these 3+ people like doing fun stuff and creating a brand around it and creating a business around it was eye-opening for me to like approach a situation with an idea and have someone say, no, I don't like that, and be okay with it. And then what you come up with being the even better, or when someone comes to you and be like, I don't like that because, and not having them be like offended right off the bat,
mm-hmm.
it was incredible.
So what would be an example of how you put that into action the last 3 or 4 years?
Oh, I mean, like that's what we do every single day.
So give me an example yesterday or last week where.
I think it's like like the Stephen Covey businessy macro business. What they teach you in business school is kind of like allow people to fail.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what this has really turned into, is like give people responsibility.
So give me an example of something you didn't know that in the old days your dad would have said, have the idea, go do it. You came in, you might have had the idea, someone else did, but it was a collaborative.
I like all the bread that we have right now is a collaborative effort between Josh and myself. Josh will do something. We try out new wheats, different formulas.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll come in and ask him to change something, and he'll get frustrated with me because we just figured out how to make it perfectly, and I'll be like, great, let's just change everything because that's boring. So it's like provoking people to when something's working perfectly, great, break it, rebuild it again, even better.
And tell me, Charlie Sr., what was your favorite day ever on the job running these 2 businesses?
My favorite day ever on the job.
When you beat Minesweeper?
I'm not sure, but before I say that, can I react to what you're just talking to Charlie about for a minute? Because it's something that occurred to me that's I can't come up with your specifics, but an indicia of the difference. I mean, I had some great guys come to work for me when we started Chabaso. They created the Chabaso Chabaso products. Coming about Kenny Evasion, just a genius, and he really was. But you know, I didn't hold on to any of those guys. I didn't part well. I didn't have great relations with them.
Mm.
Charlie's come along 20 years later, and he's got these guys that are creating really terrific products for him, and they're still there. And I think they'll still be there for a while because he has the ability to, as he says, collaborate with them and work with them and give them the positive feedback that they need. My best day on the job at Chabaso, you know, I'm not sure. It's possible that it hasn't come yet, Paul.
How about you, Charlie Jr.? What was the day when you said, okay, I didn't want to follow my dad in the business. Now I'm doing it. Was there a day where you said, glad I did this. I'm in.
Yeah, that was recently. I mean, that was in the fall because I mean, like when I left Chabaso 3 or 4 years ago, I didn't want to be there. I went through that experience at Atticus where it's like I got to build a culture. I got to be a part of a culture that was super collaborative, and even on like a really crappy day, you could come into work and be like, "Oh, I like these people, and I can like lean on these people, and they can lean on me." And even though we might be having a bad day, like it's not so bad. I'm around this team. So I definitely had that day at Atticus a couple of years ago.
Remember what was happening that day? Did you just fix something that broke, or someone was yelling and throwing a tantrum, or somebody just said,
we don't really have yellers or tantrums or throwers. Yeah, we made sure that they didn't that's just that.
Okay, before I let you go, I want to know about this New England Grains Conference. So you're part of some larger New England effort to promote a regional whole grain economy?
Just a regional grain economy, yeah. So
what is that?
Connecticut agriculture right now is feed corn and dairy. So like dairy farmers will rent out farms to grow feed corn for their cows, and those are both commodities. So they are not really making any money. They're busting their ass, and these it's tough. So all around the country, like the Pacific Northwest, up in Maine, California, down in Arizona, there's these regional grain economies where people, like we were talking about, are growing grains, especially varietals of grains, barley, wheat, rye, corn, that are grown for their nutrition, for their taste, for their usability in baked goods. And we started to see this stuff in the Pacific Northwest, was traveling out there a lot, would like, and had this moment in a barley field outside of OSU, Oregon State University, where I realized, one, I was going through 25,000 pounds of white flour a day, didn't even know what a wheat field looked like. And I felt really stupid. And then tried like ice cream and cookies made with like malted specialty barley, and realized that there was this whole other layer of like nutrition and taste in these things that we could tap into and have it be fun and work hard, but come into work and really be proud of what we're doing.
So in other words, make more healthful food that's part of a larger microeconomy.
Right. And so then when we looked at Connecticut, we tried to do this here as we set up the small bakery with Atticus. We found Andy D'Apolonio at Still River Farm grew like 2,000 pounds of wheat in Connecticut one year. We're like, great, Andy will buy all that. We used it super quick, and we were like really dumb. And we asked Andy, hey, Andy, can you like grow some more right now? And he's like, no, it'll be next year. And Andy introduced us to another big farmer, the Bass family, and they've been growing some wheat for us, and we've been kind of basically contract growing. So, you know, instead of them paying a commodity price for something, we're paying them like a specialty price for something. So they're more than happy to do this, and it's getting them into another Dan Barber phrase, but being dirt farmers rather than just like spraying and praying kind of chemicals all over corn. Because corn's like really hard.
Is it organic with the ground?
We haven't. No, nothing's certified organic because that process is incredibly expensive.
But you're trying to use your buying power to support more local dirt farmers rather than spray and pay.
Exactly.
With more variety.
Yep. Yeah.
You know, but pick up on the organic. It's not organic because it's a soil condition that they have to work over years to do. But it's very clear that they're not spraying the wheat with the same kind of chemicals that are being used in commercial stuff.
Yeah, we the Bass family this year there was no spray.
Where are they based? I gotta meet these Basses.
They're in Scotland, Connecticut.
Okay.
And yeah, exactly. There's a Scotland, Connecticut.
I know. I know it from one other thing, which is not quite as good.
Oh, okay.
Back in the 80s when they burned the cross, but the Klan. But that was like 1981.
Yeah.
So Charlie Senior, you must be so proud listening to your son about this business you started and grew, and despite your pessimism, was wild success and change with the times. And now your son is taking it a whole new direction, and you get to have a few golden years off.
You know, you're right. I am remarkably proud, and now I must confess. I'm trying to be negative again. I must confess that
we couldn't end on a positive note. That wouldn't have been accurate.
It is positive note. I want to tell you that I really appreciate this occasion you've set up for us, because I don't often get to hear my son talk about what he does, and it's not like he comes home over to the house for dinner and says, "I want to tell you a story." I have to sort of get it third hand, and getting it here and hearing him say it, stuff that I know. But hear him say it really does make me proud, and really gives me great confidence in where he's going, what he's doing.
It's a lot cheaper than a therapist, too.
And Charlie Jr., how do you feel taking over the reins from your dad?
I feel great, Paul. I'm really excited to be doing this.
Well, I'm excited you're still around.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Because I've always loved what you've done in New Haven, you guys, with your businesses, and it's great that you continue.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for this.
We're keepers.
You're defying creative destruction. You're changing with the times. You're evolving, not dying, and all the other shibboleths.
We're glad you're around, too.
All right. Well, I'm glad you were around. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to Brian Flattery behind the controls, keeping us on so many social media platforms I can't keep up. Thanks to today's guest, Charles Nagaro, Sr. and Jr. Thanks to New Haven Hospital for providing support for today's program. We're going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night at WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.